I watched my father's face drain of colour as the federal investigator flashed her badge at our Thanksgiving dinner table. My mother's hand trembled so violently that her wineglass tipped over, sending a river of red across the white tablecloth like blood seeping through snow. My sister Jenna let out a strangled gasp, mascara already streaking down her cheeks, while her fiancé Tyler pushed his chair back so hard it clattered to the floor. But I just sat there, perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, a small smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Because after 28 years of being the forgotten daughter, the responsible one, the one who was always expected to sacrifice, while my golden child sister got everything handed to her, I had finally done it. I had burned their house of lies to the ground, and I was going to watch every single ember. If you want to hear how a family built on deception can crumble in a single evening, and how I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is tell the truth, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below, telling me if you think I did the right thing. Your support means everything, and I read every single comment. Now let me take you back to where this all began. 6 months earlier, I was sitting in my small but cozy apartment in Chicago, the one I had worked 3 jobs to afford while putting myself through college. The city lights twinkled outside my window, and I had just poured myself a glass of wine after a particularly grueling day at the marketing firm where I worked. I had fought hard for every opportunity, every promotion, every moment of recognition in a world that seemed determined to overlook me, just like my family always had. My phone buzzed. Dad's name flashed across the screen. We hadn't spoken in nearly 4 months, not since the last time he had called asking for money, and I had politely but firmly declined. My stomach clenched with that familiar mixture of obligation and resentment that every conversation with my parents seemed to trigger. I answered anyway, I always did. "Emily, honey." His voice came through warm and jovial, in that performative way he had perfected over the years. "How's my successful city girl doing?" "Fine, Dad. What do you need?" I had learnt long ago to skip the pleasantries. They were just a prelude to the real reason for his calls. There was a pause, a slight clearing of throat that I recognised as his tell. "Well, your mother and I have been thinking. We're getting older, you know, and we want to make sure everything is in order. We're looking into some financial restructuring, some estate planning, and we need you to come home and sign some papers. Nothing major, just some refinancing documents. It would really help us out, honey." Refinancing, estate planning. The words sounded official, responsible even. But something about the urgency in his voice, the way he rushed through the explanation, set off alarm bells in my mind. "What kind of papers exactly?" "Oh, you know, just technical stuff. Equity loans, that sort of thing. We're tapping into the house equity to invest in some opportunities. Your mother's been wanting to renovate the kitchen for years, and this is our chance. We just need both you and Jenna to co-sign since you're both listed as beneficiaries on the estate." Both me and Jenna, that was the kicker. My sister Jenna, who at 25 still lived at home, who had never held a job for more than 6 months, who posted Instagram photos of her shopping hauls and brunch dates while our parents footed every bill. Jenna, who had been the centre of their universe since the day she was born, the baby who could do no wrong. "I need to see the papers first," I said carefully. "Email them to me and I'll have my lawyer look at them." "Your lawyer?" Dad's voice took on an edge. "Emily, we're your parents. Don't you trust us?" That was always their game. Make me feel guilty for being cautious, for protecting myself, for not blindly accepting whatever they asked of me. After all, what kind of daughter doesn't trust her own parents? It's not about trust, Dad. It's about being responsible. If you're asking me to sign legal documents, I need to understand what I'm signing. He sighed heavily, that disappointed father sigh that used to make me crumble as a child. "Fine, I'll send them over. But Emily, we really need this done quickly. There's a deadline." Of course there was. The documents arrived in my inbox 2 days later. I forwarded them immediately to Sarah Chen, a lawyer I had met through a networking event the previous year. She was sharp, experienced, and had a reputation for not suffering fools. We met at a coffee shop near her office, and I watched her face grow increasingly grim as she read through the papers. "Emily," she said finally, setting down the documents and looking at me with a mixture of concern and anger on my behalf. "These aren't refinancing papers, this is a debt transfer agreement. My heart sank. What does that mean? It means your parents are trying to make you and your sister legally responsible for their debts. According to these documents, the house isn't just being refinanced, it's underwater. They have a first mortgage and a second mortgage, both in default. The total debt is over $100,000 and the foreclosure clock is already ticking. If you sign these papers, you're not co-signing for a renovation loan. You're taking on their debt personally. Everything they owe becomes your legal responsibility. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too hot. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. They lied to me. Yes, Sarah said bluntly. They did. And Emily, there's more. If they can convince you and your sister to sign these documents, they can walk away relatively clean while you two are left holding the bag. Your credit will be destroyed. You could be sued by the banks. This could follow you for years. I thought about my apartment, my car, my job, everything I had built through sheer determination and sacrifice. I thought about all the times I had been told I was selfish for moving to Chicago, for choosing my career over family, for not coming home every holiday and birthday. I thought about Jenna, sweet, naive Jenna, who believed our parents hung the moon and would sign anything they put in front of her without question. What do I do? Sarah leaned forward. You don't sign, under any circumstances, and you need to warn your sister. But warning Jenna wasn't that simple. When I called her that evening, she answered with her characteristic breathless excitement. Emmy! Oh my God, I'm so glad you called. Tyler just proposed. Can you believe it? We're getting married. And guess what Mum and Dad are giving us the house as a wedding present? They're going to sign it over to us so Tyler and I can start our life together. Isn't that amazing? My blood ran cold. Jenna, when did they tell you this? Just yesterday. We're having a big announcement at Thanksgiving. You'll be there, right? You have to be there. It's going to be so perfect. They weren't trying to stick both of us with the debt. They were targeting Jenna, specifically wrapping their financial disaster in the pretty bow of a wedding gift. And Jenna, who had never learnt to question them, who had been sheltered and coddled her entire life, would sign away her future without hesitation. Jenna, listen to me. You need to see the actual documents before you sign anything. The house comes with a lot of debt. Oh, Emily, don't be such a downer, she said with a little laugh. Mum said you'd try to make this about money. It's not always about money, you know. Some of us still believe in family. The implication stung as it was meant to. I was the cold one, the calculating one, the one who chose money over love. Never mind that I had simply chosen survival over being used. Jenna, I'm serious. Get a lawyer to look at the papers. I don't need a lawyer. I have Mum and Dad. Look, I have to go. Tyler's taking me out to celebrate. See you at Thanksgiving. She hung up before I could say anything else. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the Chicago skyline, and made a decision. I couldn't stop Jenna from being a fool, but I could make sure that when the truth came out, there would be no doubt about what our parents had tried to do. I would gather evidence, I would document everything, and when the moment was right, I would make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of people we were dealing with. Over the next few weeks, I became a woman on a mission. I pulled public records on the house, which was surprisingly easy to do. I found the original mortgage, the second mortgage, the notices of default, the warnings from the bank. I traced the timeline of their debt, watching it balloon from manageable to catastrophic over the past 5 years. I saw the pattern of missed payments, the penalties, the interest compounding like a cancer. I created a folder on my laptop labelled simply Evidence. Inside I compiled everything. Screenshots of Jenna's Instagram posts showing off new designer purses and expensive dinners out, all while our parents claimed poverty. Copies of emails from Dad asking for loans for Mum's medical expenses that I now knew had never existed. Bank statements I had managed to obtain showing cash withdrawals that coincided with Jenna's shopping sprees. My parents had been living beyond their means for years, and when the house of cards started to collapse, they had decided to sacrifice their daughters to save themselves. First, they had tried to get me to shoulder half the burden. When I had resisted, they had pivoted to Jenna, the easier target, wrapping their manipulation in the language of love and generosity. I called Sarah again. What happens if they actually transfer the house to Jenna? Can she be held responsible for debts she didn't know about? Unfortunately, yes. If she accepts the deed, she accepts everything that comes with it. The banks don't care whether she knew about the debt or not, they'll come after her for everything. What if someone reported them for fraud? Sarah was quiet for a moment. If there's evidence of intentional deception, especially if they're trying to transfer property to avoid creditors, or if they're misrepresenting the property's condition to obtain signatures that could be investigated. But Emily, that's a serious step. That's family. I know, I said quietly, but so is letting my sister walk into a trap. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Dad called again. This time his voice had an edge of desperation. Emily, your mother is sick. We need money for her treatment. Can you help us out? Just $5,000 to cover the medical bills until the insurance kicks in. I took a deep breath. Which hospital is Mom at? I'll call them directly and arrange payment. Silence. Dad, which hospital? It's complicated, Emily. The bills haven't been finalised yet. Just wire us the money and we'll handle it. No, if Mom is really sick, I'll pay the hospital directly. Give me the name and number. More silence, then a sigh of frustration. Fine. Your mother isn't sick. Happy now. We needed the money for other things. The house payment is past due, and we're trying to keep this all together until after Jenna's wedding. Can't you just help your family for once without making it so damn difficult? There it was. The mask had slipped. They weren't even trying to maintain the lie anymore. No, Dad, I'm not giving you money, and you need to tell Jenna the truth about the house. Jenna doesn't need to know everything. She's happy. Why do you always have to ruin things? Because I'm not going to let you destroy her life to save your own. He hung up on me. That night I made one more call. To the bank that held the second mortgage on the house. I reported my concerns about potential fraud in the transfer of property. I provided them with documentation, with timelines, with evidence of the intentional deception. I knew it might take time, but I had planted a seed, and then I waited. Thanksgiving arrived cold and grey, the kind of November day that promised snow. I drove the 3 hours from Chicago back to my hometown, a small Midwestern community, where everyone knew everyone else's business, and keeping up appearances mattered more than truth. The whole way there, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would handle it. My stomach churned with anxiety, but underneath that was something harder, something I hadn't felt in years when it came to my family. Determination. The house looked exactly as I remembered it. A colonial-style home with white siding and black shutters, a perfectly manicured lawn, even in late autumn, a maple tree in the front yard that my mother had planted when Jenna was born. It looked like something out of a Christmas card, the picture-perfect American family home. But I knew better. This beautiful house was rotting from the inside out, just like the family that lived in it. I walked in carrying a small leather portfolio. Inside were copies of every document, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. My insurance policy, my nuclear option. The house smelled like turkey and cinnamon. The sense of tradition and nostalgia, designed to make you forget, to make you complicit in the comfortable lies. Mum was in the kitchen, her hair perfectly styled, wearing her best apron. She kissed my cheek without really looking at me. Emily, you made it. Can you help me with the salad? As if I was still a child being given the simplest task, because she didn't trust me with anything important. Dad was in the living room with Tyler making small talk about football. Tyler was handsome in that bland, all-American way, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I wondered if he had any idea what he was marrying into, or if he was as willfully blind as Jenna. And then there was Jenna herself, fluttering around in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, her engagement ring catching the light with every gesture. She was talking a mile a minute about wedding plans, about the house, about their future. Grandma Evelyn was there too, sitting in her usual chair by the window. She was the one person in this family who had always seen me, really seen me. When I was younger, she had encouraged me to leave to build my own life. "You're stronger than they know, Emily," she had told me once. Now, as our eyes met, I saw concern in her gaze. She knew something was coming. We sat down to dinner, the table laden with all the traditional dishes. Turkey stuffing, cranberry sauce, green bean casserole, mashed potatoes, gravy rolls. It was a feast, a performance of family harmony and abundance. Dad said grace, thanking God for family and blessings and togetherness. I wanted to laugh at the hypocrisy of it all. The meal proceeded with forced cheerfulness. Mum kept refilling wine glasses. Dad told stories about Thanksgivings past, carefully editing out all the ugly parts. Tyler seemed increasingly uncomfortable, perhaps sensing the tension that thrummed beneath the surface like a live wire. And then Jenna stood up, tapping her wineglass with a fork. Everyone, Tyler and I have an announcement. Well, actually, Mum and Dad have an announcement about us. Here it was, the moment they had been building toward. Dad stood too, his face taking on that paternal, benevolent expression he wore when he wanted to seem generous. Jenna, Tyler, your mother and I have been talking, and we want to give you the best possible start to your marriage. So we've decided to give you this house as a wedding present. We're going to transfer the deed to you so you can build your life here, raise your family here, just like we did. Jenna actually squealed, throwing her arms around Dad's neck. Tyler looked stunned, overwhelmed by what seemed like extraordinary generosity. Several aunts and uncles who had been invited murmured their approval. What wonderful parents, what a generous gift. I set down my fork. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the moment of celebration. That's interesting, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. Before everyone congratulates you, maybe Jenna should know what she's actually getting. The room went silent, all eyes turned to me. Jenna's smile faltered. What are you talking about? I reached under my chair and pulled out the leather portfolio, setting it on the table with a soft thud that somehow carried the weight of a gavel. Emily, Dad said, his voice low and warning. Not here. Yes, here, I replied calmly, because I'm not going to sit here and watch you all celebrate while my sister signs her life away to something she doesn't understand. Emily, what are you doing? Mum's voice had that sharp edge it always got when I refused to play along. I opened the portfolio and pulled out the first document. This is the current mortgage statement on this house. As you can see, the original loan of $180,000 is now at $210,000 because of years of missed payments and penalties. I slid it across the table toward Jenna. She stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. And this, I continued, pulling out another document, is the second mortgage. An additional $95,000 that Mum and Dad took out 3 years ago, also in default. Another document joined the first. What is this? Tyler asked, his voice tight. This is the truth, I said. The house that my parents are so generously gifting to you comes with over $300,000 in debt, not counting the penalties and interest that are still accruing. The banks have already started foreclosure proceedings. There's a notice of default filed with the county. If Jenna accepts this deed, she becomes legally responsible for all of it. That's not true, Jenna said, but her voice wavered. She looked at Dad. That's not true, is it? Dad's face had gone from jovial to pale to red. Emily is exaggerating. Yes, we have some debt, but it's manageable. This is normal. Normal. I pulled out more papers. Here are the letters from the bank threatening foreclosure. Here are the notices of default payment. Here's the timeline showing that you've missed 6 consecutive payments. The foreclosure auction is scheduled for January 15th. I looked directly at Jenna. They're not giving you a gift. They're giving you their debt. And they lied to me too. 6 months ago they called me pretending they needed me to co-sign for refinancing. It was the same thing. They were trying to transfer their debt to us to save themselves. You're wrong, Jenna said, but she was looking at the documents now, her hands shaking. Am I look at the papers, Jenna? Read them yourself. Tyler had stood up, moving closer to look over Jenna's shoulder. I watched the realization dawn on his face, watched the colour drain away as he understood what had almost happened. You were going to let us take on $300,000 in debt without telling us. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of betrayal. It's not like that, Mum said desperately. We were going to help. We were going to make the payments. We just needed the house in Jenna's name for tax purposes for estate planning. That's a lie, I said flatly. You can't make the payments. You haven't made a payment in 6 months. You were planning to transfer the house to Jenna, let her take the fall with the banks and walk away clean. Or maybe you thought she'd use Tyler's money to bail you out. Either way, you were willing to destroy your own daughter's financial future to save yourselves. How dare you, Dad said, his voice shaking with rage. How dare you come into this house and accuse us of this? We're your parents. And I'm your daughter, I shot back, feeling years of resentment finally breaking free. But that never seemed to matter much, did it? Not when Jenna needed something. Not when you needed something from me. I was only valuable when I could be useful. Grandma Evelyn spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. Daniel, is this true? Dad turned to his mother. Mom, it's complicated. Is it true? She repeated. He couldn't look at her. That was answer enough. Tyler had taken several steps back from the table, his hand over his mouth like he was going to be sick. I can't do this. Jenna, did you know about any of this? No. Jenna was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. I didn't know. They said it was a gift. They said we could start our life here. I didn't know about the debt. But you're still asking me to marry into this, Tyler said. Into this family, into this mess, into this lie. I didn't lie to you. Your parents did, and you're their daughter. How do I know you won't do the same thing to me someday? He pulled off his suit jacket, suddenly seeming too hot, too constrained. I need air. I need to think. Tyler, please. Jenna reached for him, but he was already moving toward the door. I'm sorry, Jenna. I can't marry into this. I just can't. The door slammed behind him with a finality that echoed through the house like a gunshot. Jenna turned on me, her face a mask of rage and devastation. You did this. You ruined everything. I told the truth, I said. That's all. You're jealous, she screamed. You've always been jealous of me, and you couldn't stand that I was getting married and getting the house, so you had to destroy it all. Jenna, I just saved you from taking on $300,000 in debt that would have followed you for the rest of your life. Tyler would have found out eventually. Better now than after you're married and legally liable. You should have kept your mouth shut, Mum said, her voice cold. This is family business. Family business? I looked around the table at all of them. You mean family secrets, the kind that rot everything they touch? Well, I'm done keeping secrets. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm done sacrificing myself so Jenna can live in a fantasy world where Mommy and Daddy fix everything. There was a knock at the door, loud, official, insistent. We all froze. Dad got up slowly, his movements stiff. Through the window I could see an official-looking sedan parked at the curb. When he opened the door, a woman in a navy blazer stepped inside. She had dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and carried a leather folder that looked a lot like mine. Mr. and Mrs. Nolan, her voice was crisp, professional. I'm Detective Sarah Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to discuss your property and some irregularities that have been reported regarding potential mortgage fraud. Mum made a sound like a wounded animal. Dad's face went from red to white in an instant. What is this? Dad stammered. We've received a complaint about possible fraudulent transfer of property to avoid creditors, as well as misrepresentation of property status to obtain signatures on financial documents. I need to ask you both some questions. The detective's eyes swept the room, taking in the scene. The Thanksgiving dinner now cold and forgotten. The papers spread across the table, Jenna crying into her hands, me sitting calm and still with my portfolio open in front of me. I assume you're Emily Nolan, the detective asked me. I am. Thank you for your report. It helped us move quickly on this matter. The room erupted. Mum started crying loud, heaving sobs. Dad turned on me with pure hatred in his eyes. You called the police on your own family. I called the bank, I said evenly. I reported what I believed to be fraud. What happened after that was their decision. You vindictive little bitch, he snarled, taking a step toward me. Grandma Evelyn stood up, moving faster than I'd seen her move in years. She placed herself between me and Dad, her small frame somehow commanding. That is enough, Daniel. You brought this on yourself. Mum, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Grandma Evelyn said, her voice steel. I understand that you've been lying to your daughters, trying to manipulate them into taking on your debts. I understand that you were willing to destroy Jenna's future to save your own skin. What I don't understand is how you became the kind of man who would do such a thing. She turned to me, her eyes soft. Emily, you did the right thing. The hard thing, but the right thing. Detective Martinez cleared her throat. Mr. and Mrs. Nolan, I'm going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions. You're not under arrest at this time, but I strongly advise you to cooperate fully. As Dad and Mum gathered their things, moving like zombies, Jenna looked up at me. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. I hate you, she whispered. I know, I said quietly, but someday you'll understand that I loved you enough to tell you the truth even when it hurt. They left, all of them. The detective, my parents, even the relatives who had been watching in stunned silence. Grandma Evelyn stayed, and so did I. We sat at the table with the ruins of Thanksgiving dinner spread before us, and for the first time in my life I felt free. The investigation took 3 months. During that time the full extent of my parents' financial deception came to light. They had been living beyond their means for nearly a decade, taking out loans they couldn't repay using credit cards to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford. When the first mortgage went into default, they had taken out a second mortgage to cover the payments. When that failed, they had started looking for other solutions. First me, then Jenna. The house went into foreclosure. It sold at auction for a fraction of what my parents owed, leaving them with remaining debt that would haunt them for years. They moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, the kind of place they would have turned their noses up at before. Dad lost his job when word of the investigation spread. Mum took a position as a receptionist, her first job in 25 years. Jenna went through her own transformation. Tyler never came back, but I think that might have been the best thing that could have happened to her. She had to face reality for the first time in her life. She moved out of our parents' house, found a small studio apartment, got a job as a teacher's aide. She started therapy. She didn't speak to me for 2 months, and then one night my phone rang. "Emily," her voice was small, tentative. "I'm here. I'm sorry for what I said, for not listening to you." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I'm sorry too. I'm sorry it had to happen that way." "No," she said firmly. "You're not, and you shouldn't be. If you hadn't done what you did, I'd be drowning in debt right now, probably divorced, definitely miserable. You saved me even though I hated you for it." We talked for hours that night. Really talked maybe for the first time in our lives. She told me about how therapy was helping her see all the ways our parents had manipulated both of us, just in different ways. How she had been kept helpless and dependent while I had been pushed away and expected to manage on my own. How neither of us had been loved for who we were, only for what we could provide. My parents were ultimately charged with attempted fraud. They received probation and community service, a slap on the wrist that felt both insufficient and somehow appropriate. The real punishment was the loss of their reputation, their standing in the community, the image they had worked so hard to maintain. I only saw them once more after Thanksgiving, at a mandatory family meeting set up by the court-ordered mediator. Dad couldn't look at me. Mum cried and tried to hug me, saying she was sorry, but I could tell she was more sorry for herself than for what she had done. They wanted forgiveness, absolution, a return to the way things were. I couldn't give them that. "I don't hate you," I told them, "but I can't trust you, and I can't have a relationship built on lies and manipulation. Maybe someday if you really change we can try again, but not now, not like this." 6 months after that disaster of a Thanksgiving, I sat in a coffee shop with Grandma Evelyn. She had moved into a senior living community and seemed happier than I'd ever seen her. "You know," she said, stirring sugar into her tea, "I'm proud of you. What you did took courage." "It didn't feel courageous," I admitted. "It felt necessary." "That's what courage is, dear. Doing what's necessary even when it's hard, even when everyone tells you you're wrong." My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Got my first paycheck from my new job. Taking myself out to dinner to celebrate. Want to join?" I smiled. "I'd love to." As I left the coffee shop, I thought about the house, the one that had represented everything wrong with my family. It had been sold to a young couple with a baby on the way. I had driven by once and seen them painting the shutters a cheerful blue, putting up a new mailbox, planting flowers in the front yard. They were building something real there, something honest, starting fresh with a clean foundation. Just like me. Truth has a cost. It cost me my relationship with my parents, at least for now. It cost Jenna her engagement and her illusions. It cost our family its carefully constructed facade of perfection. But lies have a cost too, and I had finally learnt that some prices are too high to pay. I built my life on a foundation of truth, hard work, and self-respect. I set boundaries. I learned to say no without guilt. I discovered that I didn't need anyone's approval to be worthy of love and respect, not even my family's. And Jenna, she's building her own life now too. It's not the fairy tale she imagined, but it's real, it's hers. And that makes it worth more than any gift wrapped in lies could ever be. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where telling the truth meant destroying the peace, where doing the right thing made you the villain in someone else's story? What would you have done in my position? Would you have kept quiet to keep the peace, or would you have burned it all down to save someone you loved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the black sheep for refusing to play, along with family dysfunction, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and trust me, there are more of us out there than you think. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand alone. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is tell the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts.